So, welcome back everybody. We are continuing in chapter 41. Now, we gave the introduction the other day to chapter 41. You can, it took a little time to explain what the Alter Rebbe, what is the message, where is the Alter Rebbe coming from, and what is he trying to convey precisely in this chapter. In the previous class, you can see it on the same website, just punch in Tanya, or on the tanyaonline.com website, which we mentioned in the past is the same. It's the same class, just with the advantage of the ability to follow with the text, as well the easy access to all the previous classes. So basically, the Alter Rebbe was pointing out over here that in the end of the day, it's about Kabbalah Sel Machal Shamayim, or the Alter Rebbe, if you say in the end of the beginning of the day, meaning to say, the Alter Rebbe says, Reishis Aveda, V'ikra V'sharsha, that after everything that I told you, one has to always have in mind the Reishis, the beginning of the Aveda, the Ikra, the main part of the Aveda, and the root of the Aveda. In other words, that it's, one has to have that, that Yira. In other words, the Alter Rebbe, or rather, the Alter Rebbe is coming from the previous chapters where he so clearly and eloquently explained the notion of Avo and how it's the shadish of mitzvahs asay, the idea of Yiras Hashem, the different levels in Ava, the different levels in Yira, how Yira is a yisaid for all the lois aseh. This Hashem says not to do. I fear Hashem, I have awe of Hashem, and therefore I will chas v'shalom not do what Hashem tells me not to do, and different levels, like we said in Ava V'Yira. Ava Yira Tivis, Ava Yira should be zgalusly. Again, you can see this all in the previous chapters. The Ava Yira, the innate, inherent Ava Yira, every Jew has, and the Ava V'Yira should be zgalusly by this which he's able to bring to the surface more of a passionate, qualitative ava, a qualitative yira, a qualitative love, a qualitative fear, and so on. But here the Alter Rebbe says that before anything, there has to be that simple yiras Hashem, which exists within every single yid, the yira hativis, that natural fear, which is the basis not only for mitzvahs leisaseh, for this is what Hashem says not to do, but also for mitzvahs say, push it to be a frumiyid, to do what Hashem writes in Shulchan Aruch. And again, the Alter Rebbe is pointing out, even for not to be lax, not to be laid back, and to constantly be on duty or feel the duty, and to do what Hashem says to do, what Hashem demands from us to do. For that matter, it's going to 24 hours around the clock, even though there's not necessarily a formal mitzvah every second. There is the mitzvah of Limud Torah, for example, which is every spare moment. But to be on the move, to be on the drive, to do what Hashem wants on a constant basis, even again the mitzvah say also is derish, it is demanded a yira, a fear that I will never rebel in the Melech Malcham Baruch Hu. I will never rebel in the King of all Kings, Hashem. And if I obviously if I chas v'shalom do something that Hashem says not to do, and Hashem is standing there and saying, do not do that, and I go ahead and do it, I go ahead and speak it, this is what Hashem says, no, it is prohibited to speak, to say those words, or it's prohibited, or I think chas v'shalom something, that I entertain my mind of something that Hashem says clearly do not entertain your mind with, which is again based on the pasuk, generally in the context of modesty, tznius, that's obviously a merida, a rebellion in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But even in mitzvahs say, Hashem says do it, and I'll do it later, I won't do it, I'll do it tomorrow, maybe another time, another lifetime. You have to have that shir, you have to learn Torah, you have to do mitzvahs, you have to do it correct, you have to do it behidur. and I'm a bit indifferent to that call. That's also merida b'melech machem lachem Kadosh Baruch Hu. That's also a rebellion, a demonstration of rebelliousness towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore there has to be, before anything, before we go into the emotional relationship with the Yid as HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which certainly leads to his adherence to the call of Hashem, it certainly leads ultimately for the person to do what he has to do and ultimately stay away from this which he needs to stay away from. Like we learned in the previous chapter, the Alter Rebbe says, the first thing is Kabbalah Malchus Shamayim. Remember that Hashem, together with all that, these different types of relationships that he established with the Yid, a father, a spouse, and so on and so forth, we should never forget he's a melech. He's a king. We are his subjects. We're merited to be his subjects, and therefore we have to know that Reishis HaAveidah, like we spoke then, the difference of Shema, Kabbalah says Shema, B'Hayim Shemeya, that Shema is Kabbalah says Malchus Shamayim, like the Mishnah says, Tchili Yikabel El Malchus Shamayim, then Yikabel El Mitzvahs. And the El Mitzvahs is not part of the El Malchus Shamayim. In other words, first accept yourself the yoke of heaven, and then accept yourself the yoke of Mitzvahs. And again, it explains why the Shema is established in this order. First Shema, then B'Hayim Shema. Not in the Torah. The Torah, it is like that. But why in the establishment of the mitzvah of Kriyishma, the Chachamim constituted the mitzvah, in other words, the Torah tells us to recite first the Shema, and then the Hayim Shema, or even the Torah itself. First comes Shema and then Hayim Shema, because the message has to be Kabbalah El. To always remember, before you go into details, Hashem is our King, and we have to submit ourselves, we have to subordinate ourselves to His call. Consequently, we will follow His edicts, which come through these mitzvahs, these particular edicts, these particular mitzvahs which He demands from us to do, and again demands from us to stay away from. Again, the mitzvahs last say, mitzvahs later. So this is the Kodma, the Kabbalah El Malchus Shamayim, which Kodma, similarly the Alter Rebbe says, Reishis HaAveidah, the beginning of the Aveidah, the Ikra, and the main part of the Aveidah, the Shorsha, and the source of the Aveidah, is about Kabbalah El Malchus Shamayim, accepting the yoke of Hashem, and it's about, again, before going into the Avo and Yiro, the way the Avo contributes or is the drive for the person to keep the mitzvahs hasein, and to simply want to become close on the positive, on the active side. He wants to become close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu there because he loves HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He doesn't want to disconnect from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He doesn't want there to be any type of disconnection from him and his Creator. Therefore, he will stay away from everything that Hashem says not to do. And again, that comes from a sense of yira, reverence of Hashem, awe of Hashem. But before anything, the Alter Rebbe says, remember that Hashem is a melech, and there has to be that yira, that simple fear, that simple awe of every yid. Again, before even dividing, compartmentalizing the Ava Yira, the way each one contributes to its own particular demand or its own particular commitment to Hashem, which would be the message of the previous chapters. I love you, Hashem. I want to become close to you. I want to embrace you, and therefore I know your mitzvahs are a varim de malka. Your mitzvahs are the limbs of the king, as it's lashon are your limbs, and therefore I want to embrace you because I love you, and therefore I'll do all the mitzvahs. Before anything, before that, don't override the mitzvah, because Hashem is a melech, and we don't rebel in a king. Because, and why is it so important? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shekel mi bidvari. Why is it so important for this to be a Reishis HaAveidah v'Ikra? Because, to an extent, when a person has a relationship with another party, and in this case with Hashem, I love you, Hashem, and therefore I want to connect to you via keeping the mitzvahs, as an example. All the mitzvahs say, which Ava is a shade, certainly again, we can perfectly make sense why loving Hashem is namely the root for the drive, for the passion for the Yid's commitment in the 248 mitzvahs I say, for all the positive mitzvahs, I'll put on tefillin, and I'll put up a mezuzah, and I'll light the Shabbos candles, and I'll do everything what I need to do because I know you're there. And conversely, when it comes to the yira causes, yira is the root for leisasa. But let's take Ava for example. When it's about me loving Hashem, so to some degree, even though this is what it's all about, the yid has to utilize his Ava towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu and not towards anything else. But in the end of the day, I want to relate, I want to embrace you, Hashem, because there's a bit, even on a very subtle, minimal level, this notion of I want, so sometimes the I doesn't want. Because it's about me to a great extent, and it's the best part of me, certainly, but to some degree, even subtly, it's about me. So, to some degree, or rather because to some degree it's about me, and therefore sometimes I'm not interested, and sometimes I don't love so much, and sometimes I could find something else which could override Chas v'Shalom, which is naturally there's something else coming from my Nefesh Bahamis, my Yetzer Hara, my animal soul, or my Yetzer Hara, which is presenting me other things to love and like and to be driven to, would override this, my whole relationship, my whole passion, which I have with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It can't be. Why can it be? Because in the end of the day, again, even subtly, there's about a great part of myself invested. I love you, Hashem. I want to become close to you. And therefore, it is not necessarily an absolute lock-in with Hashem, as opposed to the message that Hashem is our king, and we are his subjects. When it comes to a king and subject relationship, there's no interruption. God forbid there should be an interruption. If you think about a physical monarchy, physical king, even a good king which is, again, not dealing with a dictator or anybody, which is an oppressor, dictator, but there is that constant demonstration of submission when you're dealing with a king, because in the end of the day, it's about him, and I will never want to rebel in that king. And therefore, the first thing has to be that the Kabbalah said, that yira, that I will not rebel. And when you're talking about non-rebelling, then it really, no difference really in the leisasa mitzvah. Say, I'm constantly on duty, and constantly need to demonstrate my subordinate towards this melech, because he is a melech, and a melech malcham HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he is, again, in the last class, we pointed out that the Alter Rebbe so importantly demonstrated this Gemara, or this point, this idea, this perspective, this notion of it's about me as an individual. Hashem chose me and is interested in me as an individual. A man is supposed to say that the whole world was created for me, not in a way of an arrogant way, or in a way which is about me and my in an arrogant expression or arrogant demonstration, and a demonstration of ego. No, it's about the fact that Eibishter is interested in me right now, this moment, what I'm going to speak, what I'm going to do, what I'm going to think. V'olav bifrat. Again, you could see it in the very last class. And here the Alter Rebbe, and this is where we pick up today, that Hashem is not only interested in me, but he's really overlooking me, and he knows everything what goes on within. And one would say, well, that's obvious, but not everything, not necessarily. Sometimes we feel that we know it intellectually, we can explain it to ourselves, but when it comes to reality, like Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai once said, Yihiratzin, that you should fear God, that shall be the way. Before he passed away, he told us, Talmid, you should fear the Almighty, like you fear a basar v'adam, like a human being. And he says, Teida, when a person sins, the Gemara says, he says, I hope and I wish that no human being has noticed my violation, my transgression. So he tells his Talmidim that halavai, that you should fear God like you fear another human being. So the Alter Rebbe is really saying is that Hashem is nitzav alav, like we said by Yaakov Avinu. Remember he says, V'neichel le'yadaiti, pasuk Hashem nitzav alav really comes from Parshas Bereshis, whenever Yaakov Avinu rested up a bit after his 14 years in Shem Ba'ever, and suddenly he hears a call of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he says, V'nei Hashem nitzav alav. The pasuk says Hashem is standing right over him, And he says, didn't take it, didn't pay attention. Now Yaakov obviously knew that Hashem everything Hashem is Hashem's honor, Hashem's glory fills the entire earth. And he knew very well of this Eined Milvadi, that Hashem is everything, everything is Hashem. But what the pasuk says, at the most simple level, the Yaakov says, if I knew that God was right here, I not necessarily would have just laid down. I necessarily went to rest, like Rashi says. If I wouldn't have, the Talmud, our sages of blessed memory explain, I didn't know. If I would know, would I just rest now, just lay down to rest, knowing that Hashem is just right over me? Again, as he hears, as he experienced this prophecy of Hashem telling him, talking to him of his further inheriting the entire Eretz Yisrael and all the other messages that he had at that moment. Again, at the time that he rested, when he gets up and he says, if I knew that the Eibishter was right there, would I ever just go to sleep or so? Now, it doesn't mean that Yaakov said, I would never go to sleep. It's not the point. And the same thing in our Avodas Hashem. We know Hashem is here, but Hashem still wants us to eat and sleep and work and so on and so forth, because that's part of our Avodas Hashem. But it's the idea, what the pasuk is telling us, that it's about making the connection in our conscious mind. That V'hinei Hashem, and here the Alter Rebbe goes, V'hinei Hashem nitzav olav, Hashem is standing olav over you as an individual, not only of you as part of Am Yisrael, olav. And this Hashem is truly Malei Kol Haaretz Kavod. His glory fills the entire land. But umabit Allah. So the Alter Rebbe is saying he's everywhere, but he's not only everywhere. He's by you. He's standing by you. Umabit Allah. He's looking onto you as an individual, and also the Malei Kol Haaretz Kavod also is the message that Hashem is not just somewhere. Namely, the message Hashem is not just somewhere. La Shamayim Kavod, like it's like Lashon, or David HaMelech again brought out from a different perspective, but one could misuse that term. La Shamayim Kavod. Hashem is all the way up there in heaven, is in the Rikia Hashvi, and all the way up, all the way in the highest of heavens. Transcendent, abstract. He's here. He created it. He never has to somewhat hang around in the place where look after his pu'ula, look after his world that he created. But where's Hashem's focus? Where's Hashem himself? He's all the way up there. So the Alter Rebbe says, no, Malei Kol Haaretz Kavod. Hashem's honor fills the entire Aretz. Umabit olav. He's looking on you as an individual. Ubeichin klois v'leiv, and he examines your intestines, which means everything that goes on within you. V'leiv, and in heart places, again, the within the person. In other words, there's no domain, there's no place within your whole system that is devoid of Hashem. Devoid of Hashem's focus, gaze, interest, concern, v'leiv. He examines your heart, examines your inside, your intestines, and everything goes on inside within you. Everything, v'leiv, in your heart. If you're serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu, karoi, in appropriate manner. I just want to add the one word, just a quick Gemara on Ksubis, if I'm not mistaken. Barak Kapanim. If I'm not mistaken, it's the word karoi, also very important. Hashem is looking to see not only if you're serving Him, if you're serving karoi. Karoi means appropriately. And I just missed the famous story of the daughter of call the name, it's a famous wealthy personality. Will come back to me in a moment. Be'ezus Hashem, of his daughter, the Chachamim saw his daughter at a certain time collecting the grain from waste, which means the poverty has dropped so gravely in their home that she needed to go, in order just to sustain themselves. He sent his daughter to collect the grain which was in the waste. The Chachamim kind of it was something which was they broke apart, and they couldn't believe this great gvir, this great rich, wealthy individual which gave so much tzedakah, and all of a sudden the wheels needed to turn to such a degree. So the Gemara says the reason why the wheels turned to such a degree, because it wasn't kideboil meheve. This is the lashon of the Gemara. He gave tzedakah, and he gave a lot of tzedakah. The Gemara wants it many times. The Gemara speaks of in other places the great amount of tzedakah that he gave. But the reason why the wheels turned on him because it wasn't kideboil meheve. It wasn't the way he could have done. It wasn't maximally done. Even in giving tzedakah, which again you see over here that Hashem just doesn't want us to serve, but He wants us to be kideboil meheve. He wants it to be done maximally. You're involved in a tzedakah, you're involved in a meisid, you're giving charity, you're learning Torah, you're doing mitzvahs. Are you just doing it and following your checklist? Or it's kideboil meheve, you're doing it to the maximum. If I'm involved in this, or I can give so much tzedakah, I know I can give more. Hashem wants you to give more. Now, obviously there's limitations, according to halacha, 10%, 20%, but then there's other ideas in tzedakah, as we mentioned many times. This is refuas hanefesh, refuas haguf. It brings cure to the soul, cure to the body. And kol asher yitin lishbat nafshe, a person would give everything to save his body, certainly to save his soul. So there's one from that perspective, again, and according to halacha, now that I've explained it a number of times in Tanya, can cross even the 20%, the fifth, and could go way more. But the point is that even that, is it kideboil meheve, and is your tzedakah to buy kideboil meheve? You're learning Torah, kideboil meheve. You have another 15 minutes. Or you're cutting edges when it comes to your shiur in the Torah, and the quantity of your learning, the quality of your learning, and the same thing when it comes to every mitzvah. Hashem doesn't only want us to serve Him; He wants us to serve Him karoi. Again, it's based on a number of places of Talmud, but this is a classic story which demonstrates this karoi. And despite he gave tzedakah, and he was a symbol of a nascent tzedakah. Because it was for his level, it wasn't kideboil meheve, like the expression in the Gemara, and therefore the wheels turned. But again, this is namely the message which we extract from this Gemara, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't only want our service; He wants our service karoi. And again, in every area of Torah mitzvah, so that's a case of tzedakah. But in every area of Torah mitzvah, Hashem doesn't only want our avodah; He wants it karoi. And everything we're involved in, it's a particular shlichus, it's a particular meisid. Whatever He wants of us, He wants it to be done karoi 100%. And in other words, that we should strive that it should be 100% again devotion in this avodah. So when Hashem is overlooking, back to this again, to this important line and a half, or 2 lines over here, very important. That this becomes kind of a symbol something which encapsulates our whole, which ought to encapsulate our whole focus, our whole putting things in an accurate perspective of our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that He is nitzav, Allah, like we said by Yaakov Avinu, He's right there over us. Malay kolaretz kavede, there's no place which is devoid of His honor. Mabit love, and He's looking, gazing, focusing on you as an individual. And also, one would say, well, I'll do everything what I have to do, but in the end of the day, there's so much which are behind the surface. There could be what goes in my heart. I could do everything what I have to do on the externally, show my demonstration to all this what Hashem tells me to do. Externally, good boy, learn and daven, shuckle a lot, scream a lot, but what's going on with the heart, with my leiv and kloyes? Maybe hopefully the Eibishter doesn't really know what's going on there. So here this is what Alter Rebbe points out. Ubeichin kloyes v'leiv. Hashem examines the kloyes v'leiv. Yimei b'dikaroi, He examines heart and kloyes. If we are serving Him, if you are serving Him karoi, again appropriately, in the way you ought to serve Him. So the Alkain, and therefore tzarich laved lefonov, one has to serve and stand in service in front of Him, be'ema or v'yira, with awe and fear, ke'emid lifnei hamelech, like he stands in front of the king, v'yamik b'machshava zu, and he should invest in this thought, ponder in this thought, meditate in this thought, v'yarich bo, and expand in it, elaborate, lengthen this thought process, kifi cheles hasagas meichai, in accordance with the ability of the perception of his mind, or machshavte in his thought, ukifi apnai shalei, and based in his opportunity, on his opportunity, lifnei esik haTorah, a mitzvah prior to his occupation of Torah, prior to learning Torah, or doing the mitzvah, kemai, as an example, lifnei levishas talis tefillin, prior to donning your talit and your tefillin, your talis and your tefillin, which is really at the beginning of the day, which generally sets the tone of the day, but not only because it's the beginning in time, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu established that every morning we connect to Him in multiple ways. Again, as the beginning of the day, Hashem allowed us to have our relationship with Him with multiple ways, donning a talis, putting on tefillin, davening, learning Torah, and so on, as a whole package every morning. So that would be a good opportunity prior to donning the talis and tefillin to focus and to meditate on this above mention again of that personal relationship you have with your Creator, and that personal interest which Hashem takes in you as an individual, and He cares and He is overlooking to see what you do, speak, or think accordingly. Vigam, and also Yizbain, and you should ponder She'erein Sof Seviv Kolaman Malik Kolaman Hu Ratzin Helin Hu Melubash Baisis V'Chachmas HaTorah. This great HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the transcendent dimension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which we spoke many times, that there is the Asara Mamores and Aseres Hadibres, and I say quite a few times, so we're not going to repeat. You can see it in the previous classes, as we took time at different junctures within the Tanya to explain that there's different dimensions, like within man, there's things which he says which not much attention is given to, because it's not coming from a very profound part within the person. Pass me the cup or something. No one is ever going to quote it, because this is something people usually say. And if someone needs a cup or needs the salt or needs the sugar, he will say it. It's not something which is an important statement, even though by HaKadosh Baruch Hu or people who are meaningful, everything is important. Like the Gemara says, Sichas Chulin Shel Talmid Chachamim are also tzrichin limud. The simple talk of a Talmid Chacham, because he's a Talmid of Chachma, everything about him is associated with Chachma, and ultimately Chachmas Hashem. So everything he does and everything he says is ultimately tzrichin limud. We need to learn, and we need to kind of extract. Also, we can extract different lessons, but on the surface there's certain expressions of people which are insignificant by definition, and then there is expressions by the same person of great significance, or demonstrate who they are. We gave the example of a professor. Professor sits by tables and says, "Pass me the salt." No one quotes him, and no one makes a fuss, or no one. It's not something, even though it's coming from the same grand professor, as in an hour later when he will lecture, every word and every statement that he says is quoted, is looked into, and one seeks his intelligence via the words which one extracts, or one makes out his intelligence, his level of intelligence based on what he says. Because even though they're both coming from the same mouth, they're both coming from the same person, but there is lashon but there is words which are again by definition inferior, and there's words which demonstrate who the person is. And the same thing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as it says in a number of places, especially in Kabbalah and Zayir, it says the Asar Mamoris are called Milin de Hedyeta. These are words of Hedyet, which the simple. The words are simple because it created an Eilam, Lashon Hela V'Hesta, like Gemara says, a world which covers up over the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as opposed to Aseres Hadibreis, and the grand revelation of Matan Torah, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu exposed Himself via the Aseres Hadibreis. These are not stam words, But these are words which nafshe yotze bedabre. It's Hashem's soul coming out in these words, the most deepest parts and dimensions of HaKadosh Baruch Hu coming out in Aseret HaDibros, which ultimately encompasses the entire Torah. A Mishnah, not just words of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a Mishnah is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As we again spoke about this a number of times, and the whole point, the purpose of everything is ultimately to fuse the two. The Asara Kaf B'Shekel HaKodesh, let's explain a number of Svarim. They take the Asara Mamoris and the Aseret HaDibros rather, and infuse the Asara Mamoris. They should synthesize and ultimately become one in Welt, in the world itself. It should be felt and recognized that Hashem Echad, Shmei Echad, Hashem's oneness, again, the way it comes via the Aseret HaDibros. So when he says over here, that he says he's beinen, before a person davens, before a person enters into the important, auspicious experiences in his relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, namely in the morning when he puts on his talis and tefillin, when he stands and davens, to know that this deepest part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Seviv Kolaman, that transcendent dimension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Ein Sof of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is in these words of prayer, are in these words of prayer, are in the tefillin, are in the talis. Or he says over here, and similarly when he learns Torah, Hashem is right there within the words of the Torah. So it's not just this is a means to an end, that in this there is no energy, there's no godly energy, there's not necessarily of the Ein Sof in it. It's just a means that to focus, a means to try to yield or halt what I'm doing and the norm in order to use this, again, the talis, the tefillin, the words of prayer, the words of Torah is just for me, again, a means for me to focus on something higher, deeper, transcendent than the norm. No, much more than that. This whole transcendency exists within the words of prayer, in the Asius, in the letters of prayer. That's where Hashem is, in His Chochmas HaTorah, in the tzitzis, in the tefillin. As we spoke a number of times, the Torah is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The prayer is the Asius HaTefillah. This is where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is energy, his deepest part of himself, connects to. In other words, this is his energy. And certainly, and the same thing when it comes to a tzitzis or tefillin, this is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's limbs. Tefillin mitzvahs are called Ivorim de Malka, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, the way he's for himself, by himself, in his greatest, in his deepest levels of transcendency. Again, transcendency as opposed to the HaKadosh Baruch Hu being a creator, as a number of places it says, is the greatest yerida, degradation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a yerida, it's a descend. It's the greatest descend for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to be called a Beirei Eilam. Even though we glorify HaKadosh Baruch Hu, again, Marav Masach and Hashem, Magod Masach Hashem Zavalei, like the famous Mekubal said, Leiza HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that he creates Eilamis. It's the greatest Yerida descendant of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. As the Masar Amar is called Milin de Hedieta, creating an Eilam, which Eilam, by definition, is Lashon Helam V'Hester, covering up over the reality of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And not only Eilam has, every Eilam, as opposed to the way the Eibush does for himself, by himself. Again, if you remember, we spoke about the two dimensions of a king, the ways that the king dealing with the details and the specificities of this which he is in charge of, and then there's the majestic dimension of the king, the way he's for himself, by himself. Ultimately they're interconnected, but there is the way the Melech is Kishla Atzmei, the same thing with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Aseret HaDibros, the Seviv Kolam, this transcendent dimension of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the way Hashem is for himself, by himself, which is again the energy which brings about the core essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, exists in these Asius, in these very letters, in the wisdom of Torah, in these letters of prayer, or Torah, or Mechachmas HaTorah, in the wisdom of the Torah, or B'tzitzis, or in the Tzitzis, or Tefillin Elo, in these Tefillin, in these Tefillin. It exists in all the mitzvahs, but we're dealing with the person, again, in the state prior to his davening. Uvekriyasei, or in the morning hours, Uvekriyasei, Bilvishasei, when you read these words of prayer, or these words of Torah, and you perceive these words of Torah, Bilvishasei, or when you don the tefillin or the talis, or wrap yourself around with the talis, or you don the tefillin, Mamshich Eiris Baruch Allah, you're drawing the great light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu on you, Dahainu al Chelik al Kamimal Shebasech Gufi, on the neshama which exists within your body, which again, the neshama is a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Alter Rebbe is quoting what he mentioned in the very beginning from Tanakh that it's called a chelik from Eve. Chelik of the Kabimal, and neshama is a part of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Again, on your neshama shebasech gufe, which is in your body, which is invested in your body, lichol v'libatel b'Eidis Baruch, to be consumed and to be completely nullified in the great light of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Blessed be He. And here the Alter Rebbe goes on from the more general. This in a general term, in a general manner, it is, the Alter Rebbe explains it v'derech prat, also in a specific, and again dealing with the specific mitzvahs and how that connects and contributes to the Yid's relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, meaning to say how it expresses himself in the individual, the individual energy within a Kodesh Baruch Hu, or the specific energy within a Kodesh Baruch Hu, the way it connects with a specific dimension within the neshama of the Yid. And then he says, "V'derech prat," the Rebbe dissects again based on Kabbalah, and it explains a number of places. In Tefillin, for example, the message of Tefillin, like it says in a number of places, "L'shabed alev ameich." It's brought in Shulchan Aruch. And it's written in the Siddur as well, that before a person puts on tefillin, it's appointed to remember Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim and He gave us the Torah and so on. I mean, not exactly these words. The point is that we have to submit ourselves completely to Him. And the lashon in Shulchan Aruch is l'shabed alev ameich, to subordinate heart and mind to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When he says, this is the point of tefillin. That's why we put it on our hand, corresponding to our heart. And the tefillin sharash, which is on our brain, on our mind, on our head, on our skull, on our head, on top of the head, which is again the head being the host for the meichin, for the intellectual faculties which exist within the human being. The point of it is l'shabed, to subordinate that, to subdue that, to submit that to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And what does it mean? That to nullify and to allow your wisdom, the wisdom and understanding which exists within the godly soul, to be absorbed in the Chachmas Vinasa Shalem Baruch Hu, in the wisdom and in the Bina, the understanding of the infinite light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Blessed be He, Hamlubeshes Derech Prat, which is invested again Derech Prat in as we dissect what is happening, where is the connection, and what levels the connection. There is the connection. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Chochmah Bina is invested in the Parsha of Kadesh V'Haya Kiviyacha, which is in the Tefillin. So let me just try to explain a little more over here. We know that in various the Rebbe says in the very beginning, as the third chapter, one could easily get, if you're watching it on DanielOnline.com, could scroll down to Peri Gimel, in the very beginning, Peri Gimel, the Rebbe says that the Nefesh, the Neshama, is divided into 10 spheres, which is the Chacham Bina Das, Chesed Gvura Tiferes, Netzach Yisei Malchus, which is the 3 intellectual faculties and then the 7 emotional faculties. This is part and parcel of the neshama. The neshama, which is a part of God, is divided into 10. Now you're going to say, how can it be part of God divided into 10? It's about 1, but we know, no. Nishtal Shulumihen, Lamaila also, Kadosh Baruch Hu, as we spoke a number of times, especially the Eilam Abatzilus, which hosts the Ein Sof, is also, there is the 10 spheres of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem's Chochmah, Hashem's Bina, Hashem's Das. Now, obviously, it is not exactly the same, because He's Hashem, but nonetheless, the neshama is a chelik kamimal. The neshama is part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nishtal shulamihen, just like by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, there's the 10 spheres. So too by man, by the Yid, there's the neshama, which also has his 10 spheres. Understand them? He's speaking about Chacham, like the Alter Rebbe explained in Peri Gimel, as he dissects the neshama. He goes through every one of these different levels or different spheres. Chacham Bina Das, Chesed Gvura. Then he wraps up the other 5, and again he shows that he points out that it's part of the Gvura and Chesed, but namely he just shows you how this is all expressed as a neshama expression in a godly experience, in the godly relationship with one's Creator. In other words, obviously the Chochmah, the Nefesh Elikis, doesn't intellectualize in anything else other than on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Bina doesn't invest its expansion on anything else other than on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because it's part of the neshama. And the Sodi of the neshama has love, it's love to Hashem, has fear to Hashem. And again, I invite you to go back to Peri Gimel to see what the Alter Rebbe is saying. The neshama itself is divided into 10. Because the Kodesh Baruch Hu himself has a spheres, and Hashem is a chelik elikami mal mamish. Nishtal shlumihen, it comes from a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and Hashem has his set of 10 spheres. Obviously, the Chachma of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Ein Sof, because he is Ein Sof, but nonetheless, there is Hashem, Chachma of Hashem, the Bina of Hashem, the Chesed of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Zcherech Hamecho, Chasadecho. These are Chesed, but it's Chasadecho. There's a Rachmim, but it's Hashem's Rachmim. So Hashem himself has his 10 spheres. So when we say that the Yid connects, or that Kodesh Baruch Hu connects with the Yid via this, that he's putting on tefillin and adorning the tefillin and wrapping himself in the talus, and we say that the Ein Sof, the way Hashem has formed himself by himself, the level of Seviv Kolam, that transcendent dimension with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, is in the tefillin, is in the tzitzis, or is in these words of Torah and Tefillah. So now the Alter Rebbe says the Derech Prat, in detail, meaning to say, as let's dissect this, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in the tefillin. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it says in a number of places, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Chochmah Bina V'das. And that's the point of Shabbat Halev HaMoyach, because it's about connecting Mayach to Mayach, meaning to say my intellectual faculties with Hashem's intellectual faculties. And there's again the notion of Lev as well, heart, because Hashem's intellectual faculties, including the Das, as we mentioned then in chapter 3, which again I don't want to take the time to elaborate on this, because you can again scroll down and find it. It's towards the end of chapter 3 on the TanyaOnline.com, or even on this website, or an original website, or on the TanyaOnline.com. You have the easy access to all the previous chapters. In the end of the third class, Alter Rebbe shows you how Das divides itself to Chesed and Gvura, or for that matter to all the midas, starting from Chesed and Gvura, Lashon and Zayir, Maftecha, the Kol Shis. It's a key which includes all 6 midas. And again, it explains, you can look there to see why, what is the component of Das, and again, in the face of the other 2 intellectual faculties, the cognitive faculties, Chachma and Bina. But the point Alter Rebbe is saying over here is that when we say L'Shabbat Halev HaMoyach, because Hashem's Chachma and Hashem's Bina and Hashem's Das, which is divided to Chesed and Gvura, which is naturally an emotional, two of the most important emotional faculties, the Chesed side and the Gvura side, which comes from Das, all is invested in the tefillin. All is invested in the Peret Tefillin that you're putting on. And what is in the Peret Tefillin? We know in every Peret Tefillin there is the 4 parshias. The Kriya Shema, the V'hayim Shemaya, and the Kaddish, and the V'hayim Kviyacha. So it says in a number of places that the Parish Hashem's Chochmah Bina, the wisdom and the Chochmah of Hashem and the Bina of Hashem is in the Parsha of Kaddish V'hayim Kviyacha. Those 2 parshas. The Das, which divides itself into Chesed Gvura, is in the Parsha Shema V'hayim Shemaya. Which one is Chesed, which one is Gvura? It's in a number of places. It's explained in a number of places. Again, in Kabbalah, and Shema usually is Chesed, and Shema is Gvura. A number of places it says that it's the opposite, but there's no contradiction. The Tzemach Tzedek and Derech Mitzvah reconciles between the different statements with clear reconciliation. But ultimately it's the Das, which is divided into Chesed Gvura, is invested, of Hashem, is invested in the Parsha Shema and V'hayim Shemaya. Then Hashem tells the Yid, put on those tefillin. When you put on the tefillin, your chokhmah, in other words, the chokhmah, bina, and das of the neshama, of the nefesh elikis, which is a chelik elikamimal, which is a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, connects with the chokhmah, bina, das of HaKadosh Baruch Hu via the putting on tefillin. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu's chokhmah, bina, and das, which is again das, which is divided, the chesed and gvura, goes into all the 4 parshias, which you have 4, chokhmah, bina, and the das, the way it's connected, divided into 2. And again, the lev part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, or the das, the third of our intellectual cognitive faculties, which is divided into chesed and gvura, the 2 primary emotional faculties, which again is number 3 and 4, invest in these 4 parshias. And when I put it on, so that's the point. L'shabed alev hamech. Why is it an opportune time to submit my heart and mind to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Why can't I do it without tefillin? And we still have to do it without the tefillin, because the point is that when we take out the tefillin to allow this shibud, the submission to perpetuate throughout the entire day. That is the point. But yet, why is that why can it easily happen? Why is it meant to easily happen? When I put on my tefillin, because that's the point of the tefillin. Hashem's chokhmah bina and das, the Vayim Chesed Gvura, invests in that tefillin. When I put it on, it invests into my neshama. And which part of my neshama? The corresponding faculties of my neshama, my chokhmah, my bina. Again, the chokhmah bina of the nefesh elikis, and the ches and the das of the nefesh elikis, which is well divided into chesed and gvura, which corresponds, as we spoke a number of times, and we could perfectly appreciate chesed, av, a love of Hashem, love to Hashem, yira, awe of Hashem, gvura, yira. Remember, we spoke many times about the connection and how gvura is about yira, discipline, and so on and so forth. Again, we can appreciate even by hearing these words, chesed, ava, gvura, yira. We spoke about this again a few times in the past. And so it connects to that dimension of my neshama that allows my chokhmah, bina, and das of my neshama to reinvigorate with a chayis, with a new chayis, in order to follow and to connect to Hashem's chokhmah, bina, and to Hashem's das, meaning to say that my whole heart investment, my chesed and gvura, my ava v'yira, should be towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. My chokhmah, bina should be solely towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is what allows us. That is what gives the push, or that is what allows it to happen on the most on the most practical levels of the submission of my chokhmah, bina, and das to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because I put on the tefillin, which HaKadosh Baruch Hu's chokhmah, bina, and das is in these 4 parshas of tefillin. So when I put it on, it allows me to not only to formally connect to the Hashem's chokhmah, bina, das, how it connects to my chokhmah, bina, das by putting on tefillin, like we just said, but it obviously has that the message, what it sends, not only as a formal, not only as a symbolic, rather, the word we're looking for, not only as a symbolic message, but the Hainel Rebbe goes further, it gives me the kayach to stay focused. Why am I putting on tefillin? Not to utilize, not to use my b'chokhmah bina of my nefesh, built till Hashem levadei, to the exclusion of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Everything, in other words, to only use my wisdom and understanding towards Hashem. And the same thing, to annul and to absorb, to allow the das, which is in my nefesh. Again, my nefesh, which is comprised of the 10 spheres, to have that completely be part of Hashem's das. And he explains, just like the das, which includes the chesed gvura, which is yira v'avo, which is fear and love, which again exists within every single yid, because I have the nefesh, which is comprised of these 10 spheres, including chesed gvura, which the das itself is the intellectual faculty, which comes and is divided and includes the chesed gvura, and it makes the connection, as we spoke then in Perek Gimel a number of times, that is the component within a component faculty, again within my cognitive faculties, the intellectual faculties, it's still called das, which makes the connection between mind and heart. Again, we spoke about it a number of times, why the Torah says v'yadaita hayom, uses many times lashon das, because not only understanding something perfect, perceiving something perfect intellectually, which is again the bina, the expansion of a concept, which again it's thorough. It can be thorough in my mind, and not necessarily it relates to me. That's the component of das, becoming intimate with a concept. That's why, for that matter, when Torah speaks about intimacy, many times the Torah says that yod v'adam yod es chava, because there's knowledge and knowledge. It's the whole point of intimacy. Become part of the experience. And that's why das is the maftecha, the kol shis, that's the conduit through which intellect connects with heart. And then the same thing, so there is my das, which is kol, which is das, which is divided into chesed gvura, which is yira v'ava, should believe within my heart, connects with the das elyon, the supreme das of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which is in the parsha of V'hayim Shema V'hayim Shemaya. And again, what does that tell me? That if I have das, it's towards HaKadosh Baruch Hu. and which that would lead to the Chesed Gvura. Means if I have love, it's love to Hashem. Yira, it's fear to Hashem. That's the energy. Again, it's not symbolic. It's the energy which comes through the experience of putting on tefillin. And that gives me the ability to follow suit with my mandate, and again, to focus constantly on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If I have a Chachma Bina and Das, it should be all to our HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Again, the Das, the way it divides itself to Ava v'Yira, the love to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yira of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And to make it real, and to make it constant, and to increase ever more by every time I have the ability to put on tefillin. L'arichas yomim, mishalim tevis. And that's what he says. In the Das, the supreme Das of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kel Chesed Gvura, which is included, Chesed Gvura, Malubish B'Parshat Shema V'Hayim Shema, which is invested in the Parsha of Shema, and invested in Parsha V'Hayim Shema, like we said, the Chesed and Gvura, each one is, those two are invested in these two parshas. This is what it means, what it says, which is stated in Shulchan Aruch, l'shabed halev ha'meich, to submit one's heart and mind to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And then it will just conclude again, because we started as well with the tzitzis. And the same thing when it comes to tzitzis. Atifas tzitzis, when a person wraps himself around in the tzitzis yichavin, he should have the kavanah mishkas b'zerah. You should have the kavanah, which means you should focus and have the proper intent. What is the intention when you wrap the tzitzis? Like it says in Zohar, lahamshech olam malchusi yisbarach asher malchus kol ilamim. To draw upon yourself the malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem's reign, Hashem's kingdom, which is the malchus of all elements, the dominance, Hashem's rulership, Hashem's reign over all the worlds, to connect Aleinu on us, which are His subjects, again, via putting on the talis, what is the obvious difference between the talis and any other particular mitzvah which we do? This we wrap ourselves completely around with, which that's the point of Kabbalah Sa'il Malchus Shemayim, accepting the yoke of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Like we mentioned, the Mishnah says, as mentioned in the Mishnah earlier, of the Kabbalah Sa'il as opposed to V'hayim Shemaya Tishmal Mitzvah Sai, it's particular mitzvahs. Tzitzis is also particular mitzvahs, but it's symbolic of the Malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that I have to overall understand that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a Melech, and not only a Melech, a king, but he's Melech Malch, Melech HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the wrapping around means to say all about me is about Him. It's not a detail about me, about Him, but all about me is about Him. My submission to Him. I, by definition, are His subject and merited to be His subject. That's the point of tzitzis, liyachta aleinu al demitzazu, the point of completely sort of wrapping myself around in a mitzvah, which is again Hashem Himself. It's not only a means to an end, but Hashem Himself is in His mitzvahs, but this mitzvah, Hashem established this mitzvah that a person completely wraps himself around in this mitzvah, because this mitzvah is symbolic of that Malchus Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Like it says, Seim Tosim Alecha Melech. Like the pasuk says, place upon you a king. So what does it mean, place upon you a king? It's obviously about the message of submit yourself to the king. And again, also it means simply the mitzvah, one of the 613 mitzvahs, that Yid should have a king, Yidden should have a melech. And it was an important part of the development of Am Yisrael, Lamanis Melech, and to get rid of the Zar Shel HaMolech and build the Beis HaMikdash, which are the three, which is incumbent of a Malchei Yisrael, the state of Israel, a state of Yidden as they enter into Eretz Yisrael, to do this three. And again, Minui Melech is one of the crucial mitzvahs, the more important mitzvahs in the Torah. But it's not a contradiction. Again, this is the point, as it's placed a number of Sfarim. At the point of a Melech, Minui Melech among Yidden, is that he carries the message of Melech Malchem Lachem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'yis Yirasi al Pneim, that the fear of HaKadosh Baruch Hu via the Melech should be al Pneihem, on the face of the people. So he is just the one, again, draws, is that particular channel of a Malchus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to come upon the people. So that's also same Tosim Alecha Melech, just like it's in simple mitzvah, placing a king upon yourself. HaKadosh Baruch Hu demands from the Yid, same Tosim Alecha Melech. They should not only know that there's some king hanging around somewhere up there, but same Tosim Alecha, on you should place a Melech, which is Melech Malchem Lachem HaKadosh Baruch Hu. which is the message V'hini Hashem Nitzav Alav, which is the message of this Perek, but in specifically, it comes through the particular style. Again, HaKadosh Baruch Hu established the style of this mitzvah to be in a way that you wrap yourself around in the talis, which is the notion is not only I'm going to do what Hashem wants, but same Tasim Melech HaMelech, I'm completely engulfing myself, I'm completely surrounding myself, and it was an overall submission to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Melech Malchei Amlach HaKadosh Baruch Hu, fulfilling the mitzvah of saying Tasim Melech HaMelech, placing upon you again as an individual Melech, in this case the Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Have a wonderful evening.